Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Just 4 years after the release of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Warner Brothers brought J.K. Rowling's magical world to the big screen. In 2001, the film about the young wizard's adventures grossed over $1 billion, earned 3 Academy Award nominations, and delighted both audiences and critics alike. One of the reasons for this success was the respectful treatment of the source material. However, despite being a faithful adaptation, there are still notable differences between the book and the movie. Today, we'll revisit the major differences between the book Philosopher's Stone and its film version. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Departure to Hogwarts. In the movie, we immediately see Harry with Hagrid at the train station, creating the impression that only a couple of hours passed since their shopping trip to Diagon Alley. There's no sense of time, just a scene change. In the book, it's very different. Harry returns to Privet Drive to stay with the Dursleys because it's still July 31st, his birthday. It's only a month later, on September 1, that the Dursleys, still mocking him, drive him to King's Cross Station, fully convinced that Platform 934 doesn't exist. Number 2. Norbert the Dragon. One of the strangest and most simplified scenes in the movie is when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are wandering around the school at night without the invisibility cloak, chatting loudly in the corridors. Draco catches them and reports them, and that's it. Norbert's fate is left unexplained. In the book, the story is much more detailed. After Norbert hatches, Ron gets bitten and ends up in the hospital wing. Hermione and Harry decide to secretly send the baby dragon to Ron's brother Charlie, who works with dragons in Romania. Under the cover of night and under the invisibility cloak, they bring Norbert to the astronomy tower where Charlie's friends are waiting. But on the way back, they're caught by Filch. Number 3. Hagrid's handmade flute. At first glance, this seems like a small detail, but it says a lot about the characters and attention to detail. In the film, we only see one gift Harry receives, cut in the invisibility cloak. The rest are left out. In the book, Harry gets a whole pile of gifts: homemade treats from Ron and his family, chocolate frogs from Hermione, a hand-knitted emerald sweater from Mrs. Weasley, and even a copper coin from the Dursleys. But one stands out: a simple, handmade flute carved by Hagrid. It's that flute that later puts Fluffy, the 3-headed dog, to sleep. In the film, it seems Hagrid chose to keep the flute for himself. Number 4. The Path to the Philosopher's Stone. The film significantly shortened the challenges leading to the Philosopher's Stone. For example, the scene with the troll, which Quirrell had to overcome, is completely omitted. But the most unfortunate cut is Snape's logic puzzle. In the book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione encounter a magical riddle that can only be solved by logic. Hermione quickly figures it out, proving that intelligence matters just as much as courage or magic. Sadly, the film deprived her of this brilliant moment. Number 5. The Forbidden Forest. In the movie, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Draco are all sent into the Forbidden Forest for detention. But the book tells a slightly different story. Ron is in the hospital wing recovering from Norbert's bite and can't participate in the punishment. Neville takes his place. He had overheard Malfoy plotting something and tried to warn Harry and Hermione, only to get caught himself. In the forest, Hagrid first pairs Draco with Neville, but soon sees a distress signal. Red sparks. Turns out Malfoy just scared Neville. Hagrid rearranges the groups. He takes Hermione and Neville and sends Harry with Draco. Number 6. The Midnight Duel. After Harry impresses everyone with his flying skills, Draco becomes furious and challenges him to a duel. The duel is set to take place in the trophy room at midnight. Harry goes with Ron, and they're joined by Hermione and Neville, who couldn't get back into the common room because the fat lady was missing. But it's all a trap. Malfoy had already tipped off Filch to get Harry in trouble. This is how the kids end up in the corridor with the 3-headed dog. In the film, this entire subplot was cut. The trio just happens to stumble upon the forbidden door. Number 7, Peeves, and here's a character who never appeared in any of the films. Since Peeves first shows up in Philosopher's Stone, let's start with him. Peeves is the Hogwarts poltergeist, a prankster, a nuisance, and a living nightmare for Filch and the teachers. His mischief, tricks, and sarcastic rhyming chants give the school a unique atmosphere. In the books, he plays a noticeable role, especially during moments of chaos and rebellion. Sadly, the filmmakers decided to cut this colourful character entirely. Number 8. Draco's first encounter with Harry. In the film, Draco Malfoy offers his hand to Harry after the sorting. He sneers at Ron, talks about the wrong sort, and gets rejected with one sharp line. It's quick, clean. But in the book, their first meeting happens earlier, inside Madame Malkin's robe shop. Two boys sitting side by side on stools, strangers. Draco talks first. "My father's next door buying my books and mother's up the street looking at wands," he says casually. Then he launches into complaints about Hogwarts letting in all sorts, about how Quidditch is the only thing worth learning and how he hopes he ends up in Slytherin. Harry doesn't reply much, but in his silence we feel everything. Discomfort, confusion, disgust. He doesn't even know this boy's name yet, but already dislikes him. That moment plants a seed. When they meet again at Hogwarts and Draco holds out his hand with, "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are better than others," Harry knows exactly what kind of boy he's dealing with. He doesn't just reject a handshake, he rejects a worldview. The film makes their rivalry instant. The book makes it earned. Number 9. Hermione's vow. Hermione Granger stood in the corridor, face pale, hands shaking. They had just escaped Fluffy, the three-headed dog, and barely avoided getting caught by Filch. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled." But later, something changed. In the book, after that terrifying night, Hermione made a quiet vow. She would never break the rules again. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest, the kind of promise made by someone who was truly frightened. This moment matters. It shows Hermione's fear, not of danger, but of failure. She had spent her life following rules, trusting that order meant safety. Getting caught almost shattered her. But that vow didn't last long. Because when the next crisis came, when Harry and Ron needed her, she broke the rules again, willingly. She lied. She snuck out at night. She stood in front of teachers and lied through her teeth, not because she stopped caring about rules, but because she cared more about people. The film gives us Hermione the genius, the girl with answers. But the book gives us Hermione the loyal, the brave, the flawed. Her fear, her vow, and her choice to break it all built her arc. She didn't betray her values, she redefined them. Not all bravery looks like charging into battle. Sometimes it looks like risking detention for a friend. Number 10. The Mirror of Erised. Harry found the Mirror of Erised by accident, but he couldn't stay away. In the movie, we see it once, his reflection, smiling with James and Lily, and then it's gone. But in the book, the mirror becomes an obsession. Every night, under the invisibility cloak, Harry returns. He watches his parents move, smile, wave. He memorizes every detail. He'd never known a quieter place. He stared hungrily back at them. He didn't just see them, he studied them. His mother's eyes, his father's messy hair. He wanted to step into the glass. The pain runs deep. Harry isn't chasing glory or power. He's chasing the memory of something he never had. Love, family, a face to match the name in bedtime stories he never got to hear. Dumbledore notices. He warns Harry. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. And then the mirror is gone, moved, hidden, because magic that touches the heart can also trap it. The film shows one moment, the book shows a haunting. This mirror isn't just magical, it's dangerous. It whispers to the lost, tempts the lonely, and reflects not who we are, but what we miss most. Harry, just 11, was ready to lose himself inside it. And yet it's that quiet heartbreak, those wordless nights staring into glass, that tells us who he is. Not just the boy who lived, but the boy who longed to be loved. Number 11, the Quidditch match experience. The first Quidditch match in the film feels like a magical roller coaster. Harry zooms through the air, the crowd cheers, the camera spins. Then suddenly he catches the snitch in his mouth. Game over. It's fast and fun, but it leaves no time to breathe, no time to care about the game itself. We don't hear the rules, we don't know the positions, we don't even learn the score. It's just flash and noise, not sport. In the book, it's an entirely different experience. Rowling builds the match like a real event. Lee Jordan commentates loudly, half cheering for Gryffindor, while McGonagall hisses for him to be impartial. Fred and George Weasley guard the hoops. Angelina Johnson dodges a bludger. Even Wood, the Gryffindor captain, gives Harry a pep talk about seeker tactics before the match. The world feels alive. The crowd roars. The players have names, roles, and rhythm. Every movement matters. And Harry, he doesn't win by luck. He wins because he watches, waits, and dives at the perfect moment. One of the most charming details comes when Professor McGonagall spots Neville in the stands. He's holding only one side of his binoculars. He's so caught up in the action he forgot how they work. That's how absorbing the match is. The book doesn't just describe a game, it captures excitement, confusion, pride, and tension. The reader feels like they're there, hearing the wind, gripping the seat, waiting for the snitch to glint in the sun. By skipping all of that, the film turns Quidditch into spectacle, not sport. There's no time to understand why it matters. We don't feel the stakes, the teamwork, or the build-up. But in the book, Quidditch is more than a game. It's a window into the magical world. It's where Gryffindor cheers like a family, where Harry flies not just to win, but to belong. Number 12, Hogwarts, a history. Hermione didn't stumble into knowledge by accident. She earned every fact. Long before she stepped onto platform 9 3/4, she had already devoured every book she could find. Chief among them was Hogwarts, a history. In the film, she appears as an unstoppable know-it-all, always ready with an answer. But in the book, there's a reason. I've read all about it in Hogwarts, a history, she says more than once. The book wasn't just a guide, it was her anchor. For a Muggle-born girl entering a world she'd only read about, it meant safety. She read it to understand the rules, to fit in, to survive. While other kids wondered what Hogwarts would be like, Hermione already knew the school's founders, the history of magical education, the layout of the castle. It's how she knew about enchanted ceilings, house elves, magical laws, and yes, platform 9 3/4. It's all on page 94 of Hogwarts, a history, she told Harry and Ron, a line the film never gave her. That single detail explained how she navigated the wizarding world with so much confidence. She had studied it like a foreign language. But the story runs deeper. That book wasn't just information, it was identity. Hermione came from a non-magical family. She had no older siblings in the wizarding world, no magical relatives to guide her. Hogwarts, a history, became her lifeline. It gave her a sense of control in an overwhelming new reality. Her love of learning wasn't arrogance, it was her way of building a place for herself. And by removing the book from the film, something subtle but powerful was lost. Hermione's brilliance became a quirk rather than a choice. By skipping Hogwarts, a history, the film flattened her origin. It made her cleverness seem like a plot device. But in truth, her hunger for knowledge was born from fear, isolation, and a need to belong. That little line, I've read about it in Hogwarts, a history, was more than a catchphrase. It was a quiet declaration that she would not enter this world unprepared. And that determination is what truly made Hermione Granger extraordinary. Number 13, Neville's heroic moment. Neville stood in front of the common room door, fists trembling. He wasn't brave like Harry, he wasn't clever like Hermione or quick-witted like Ron, but he had heard their plan, and he couldn't let them break more rules. Not again. "You can't go out," he said, blocking their way. His voice cracked. "You'll get Gryffindor into trouble again." The room fell silent. Even Harry hesitated. This wasn't Malfoy sneering. This was Neville, scared, stammering but standing his ground. It was the first time he'd ever done that, the first time he didn't back down. Hermione raised her wand with shaky hands. "I'm really, really sorry about this, Neville," she whispered, and cast Petrificus Totalis. He collapsed stiffly to the floor, unable to move. As they stepped over him, none of them laughed. There was no triumph in defeating Neville, just guilt. But in that small act of resistance, Neville had done something extraordinary. He tried to stop them, not because he wanted attention, but because he believed it was right. He was alone. No backup, no glory. At the end of year feast, the hourglasses showed Slytherin in the lead. Green and silver banners hung proudly across the great hall. Dumbledore stood calm as always and began handing out last-minute points. Hermione, 50. Ron, 50. Harry, 60. The room exploded in whispers. Gryffindor was close, but not enough. Then Dumbledore paused. He looked straight at Neville. His voice was steady. "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Neville Longbottom." 10 points. That was all it took. The banners vanished. Red and gold burst across the ceiling. Gryffindor had won the House Cup. The hall roared with joy, but Neville just sat frozen, stunned. The smallest lion had roared at last. The film skipped this moment almost entirely, leaving Neville silent and still. But the book gave him his due. It was a quiet, perfect ending for a boy who began the year losing his toad and ended it winning the respect of everyone. Number 14, The Sorting Hat and Harry's Choice. The sorting hat sat on Harry's head for nearly 5 minutes, whispering thoughts only he could hear. In the movie, the moment flashes by. "You could be great in Slytherin," it says, and then announces Gryffindor, with no time for doubt. But in the book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the scene unfolds slowly like a private battle. The hat tempts him with promises. "You could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that." It's not just sorting, it's seduction, and Harry, 11 years old and terrified, silently begs, "Not Slytherin, not Slytherin." The hat pushes back. It praises his ambition, his clever mind, his thirst to prove himself. It insists that he do well in Slytherin, but Harry resists, not with logic, but with emotion. He doesn't want to be like Draco Malfoy. He doesn't want to share a house with people who sneer at Ron Weasley or mock Hagrid. He doesn't even fully understand what Slytherin means, but he knows it feels wrong. "Not Slytherin, eh?" the hat finally murmurs. "Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor." The decision feels earned. It's not magic choosing a path. It's a boy, already shaped by values, choosing who he wants to be. This internal struggle is never shown in the movie. There's no tension, no fear, and no identity crisis. But in the book, it's Harry's first real choice. It's the first time he stands up to something powerful. The hat isn't evil, it simply sees potential. But Harry chooses heart over ambition. He doesn't want power for power's sake. He wants friendship, loyalty, bravery. The scene reveals not just where he ends up, but why he belongs there. It's the earliest proof that Harry's courage begins in silence. Without that extended scene, the movie loses a key thread. Later in the story, Harry wonders aloud, "I'm like Slytherin. Maybe I should have been in his house." It's a moment of doubt, one rooted in that first conversation. Without the memory of resisting the hat, that line loses weight. But with it, we understand him better. He fears he's not good enough. That deep down, the sorting hat saw something dark. It's that tension that gives his character depth, and it all started on a stool with a battered hat and a terrified whisper. Not Slytherin. Number 15, Diagon Alley. Harry's first trip to Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone book was a moment soaked in magic, wonder, and emotion, a vivid explosion of colour and life that left an indelible mark on him and on the readers. Yet in the film adaptation, this transformative experience is reduced to a sequence of errands. The difference isn't just about what is shown or omitted. It's about how the world is revealed and how Harry's identity within that world is gently but powerfully awakened in the book, while in the movie, the scene becomes a brief transition, a montage to push the plot forward. Rowling's writing turned that day into a celebration, the first true one Harry had ever experienced. In contrast, the film treats it like an exotic shopping trip. From the moment Hagrid taps his pink umbrella against the brick wall behind the leaky cauldron, the book plunges us into the new world alongside Harry. Rowling paints Diagon Alley as a dizzying, chaotic wonderland. Harry's senses are overwhelmed. The street is narrow and cobbled, with shops piled high with strange things. There are cauldrons stacked outside shops, barrels of bat spleens, cages full of chattering animals. Harry watches, fascinated as a boy presses his nose to a window filled with broomsticks, and witches weigh out silver sickles. The place is alive. The book lets this experience unfold at a gentle pace, drawing the reader into each curious detail. Harry doesn't just observe the world, he breathes it in. He soaks in every sound, every texture, every peculiar smell. His eyes are wide and his heart is open. Rowling takes time to let Harry wander, both physically and emotionally. He marvels at the robe shop, where he meets Draco Malfoy for the first time. He is confused and intrigued, his instincts on alert. There's a weight in this moment. It sets up the class and bloodline themes that will haunt Harry's years at Hogwarts. Then there's the bookstore, Flourish and Blots, where Harry's imagination ignites. He lingers over books like Theories of Transubstantial Transfiguration and The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts. He stares at titles about curses, ancient magic, and enchanted creatures. These aren't just textbooks to him, they are portals to knowledge, adventure, and mystery. His curiosity is real, deep, and respectful. The reader is with him in every glance. One of the most touching moments in the book's Diagon Alley scene is also one of its smallest, when Harry tries ice cream for the first time in his life. Hagrid buys it for him, chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts, and Harry sits on a bench, tasting something both delicious and symbolic. It's not just dessert, it's comfort, care, and affection. It's a father figure giving a boy a small kindness. Harry wished he had about 8 more stomachs, Rowling writes, hinting at a hunger deeper than food, a hunger for belonging, for joy, for life outside the cupboard under the stairs. In this moment, Diagon Alley is more than a place, it is the beginning of home. The film version skips this emotional layering. Diagon Alley in the movie is reduced to a blur of cobblestones, dark wood, and swift camera pans. Hagrid and Harry walk quickly through the streets. There's barely time to register the vibrant market of spellbooks and potion ingredients. The richness of the wizarding economy is flattened. The scenes feel rushed, practical, transactional. We see Ollivanders, and then we're off to King's Cross. The viewer is barely given time to understand what Diagon Alley is, let alone what it means to Harry. Even Ollivanders, one of the most symbolic shops in the book, loses some of its gravity in the film. In the book, Mr. Ollivander is eerie, mysterious, almost ghostly. He knows Harry's name. He remembers selling the wand that scarred Harry's forehead. He speaks in a whisper, hinting at great destinies and ancient magic. The wand chooses the wizard, he says, and when Harry's wand, Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, Holly, responds with sparks and warmth. It's more than a tool, it's a bond. This moment connects Harry to Voldemort in a way that will haunt him. But in the film, this exchange is abbreviated. The emotional charge is muted. It becomes a functional task. Get wand, move on. Another piece lost in the film is the Gringotts experience. In the book, Gringotts is not merely a bank, it's a fortress of dragons, curses, and goblin-run security. Rowling describes miles and miles of winding passages and a rattling cart ride deep underground. Harry, nervous and exhilarated, watches as his birthright, piles of gold and silver, is revealed. It's a moment of astonishment. He is rich. For the first time, he has something that is truly his. This isn't just money, it's a symbol of legacy, a key to freedom. The vault full of galleons is silent but meaningful. It connects Harry to his parents, to a world he never knew he had been robbed of. The film brushes past this revelation. We see a vault, but not the emotion. We don't feel Harry's inner shift. One of the most beautiful passages in the book happens when Harry simply walks through the alley, marveling at magical pets. He sees cages of ravens, brightly coloured toads, sleek black cats. There are owls in every size and colour, and Harry is mesmerised. In that moment, magic is not just in wands and spells. It's in life, in creatures, in possibility. Rowling never rushes him. She lets the reader linger, lets us feel Harry's awe. When Hagrid gives him Hedwig, a snowy owl with golden eyes, it is more than a gift. It is the beginning of a companionship, a symbol of affection, and a bridge between Harry and the magical world. In the film, the moment exists, but it is delivered quickly, almost casually, and the emotional resonance is lost. Number 16, Professor Binns. In the corridors of Hogwarts, filled with talking portraits, mischievous ghosts, and enchanted staircases, there existed a presence so dry and ancient that even the poltergeist Peeves wouldn't bother with him. Professor Cuthbert Binns, the history of magic teacher, was not only a fixture of the school, but a ghost who had quite literally forgotten to die properly. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Binns stands as one of the many subtle wonders of the magical world, a symbol of how the wizarding realm defies logic and embraces the absurd. Yet, despite his peculiarity and importance in a key narrative moment, he was completely omitted from the film adaptation. His absence is not just a trimming of detail, it is a subtraction of texture, tone, and a glimpse into the bizarre charm of Hogwarts itself. In the book, Binns is introduced with an almost comical mundanity. Rowling writes that he had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up next morning to teach, leaving his body behind him. This sentence, dripping with dry humour, gives more than just a biography. It's a perfect encapsulation of the wizarding world's indifference to ordinary rules. Binns, now translucent, glides through blackboards and continues to drone on about goblin rebellions as though death itself were just a mild inconvenience. His continued presence is not questioned by the faculty or students. He simply is an immortal. Embodiment of routine. Though his teaching methods are uninspired and his lectures famously dull, Binns unexpectedly becomes a pivotal character when Hermione, ever the diligent student, asks him about the legend of the Philosopher's Stone. The students, having overheard Hagrid mention Nicholas Flamel, find themselves lost in books, desperate for answers. When those answers prove elusive, they turn to the one person who might actually have first-hand knowledge of ancient magical history. Binns, however, is initially reluctant. As Rowling describes it, he had never been asked a question by a student before. His surprise is telling. It paints a picture of a man, or rather a ghost, completely disengaged from his classroom, floating through centuries of repetition. Still under the persistent nudging of Hermione and the curiosity of Harry and Ron, Binns begrudgingly provides a dry and dismissive summary of the legend. He explains that Flamel was said to have created the Philosopher's Stone, a mythical object capable of turning metal into gold and producing the elixir of life. This moment is brief but critical. It confirms the students' suspicions and sets them on a path of discovery that shapes the remainder of the book. Without Binns, the puzzle of the stone might have remained too obscure to unravel. The film, however, sidesteps this encounter entirely. Instead of Professor Binns, the exposition about Nicholas Flamel is delivered in fragments, through a chocolate frog card, through whispered conversations, and eventually through a library book Hermione finds. While the facts are conveyed, the delivery loses the whimsical tone that Binns brings. The ghost who teaches as if nothing had changed since the Middle Ages becomes just another casualty of cinematic efficiency. What's lost is more than a character, it's a feeling, a sense that Hogwarts is alive in its eccentricities, even in its most boring classes. There is something uniquely British and academic in Binns's portrayal. He is the ghost of 1,000 history teachers droning endlessly about names and dates no one remembers. Yet there's affection in how Rowling writes him. He is not cruel or malicious, he is simply detached, a symbol of institutional inertia. His lessons are mind-numbing, but his accidental wisdom, the kind dragged out by persistent students, is what provides the narrative with a needed jolt. When he finally relents and talks about Flamel, it's as though the dusty archives of magical knowledge creak open to be just a moment, revealing truths long buried. In the classroom, Binns is described as hovering in front of the blackboard, his voice a monotone drone that made the story of the International Warlock Convention of 1289 sound as boring as possible. The way the students react, heads lolling, quills falling from limp hands, emphasizes just how out of sync he is with the living. He is a relic, literally and figuratively, but this also makes his sudden relevance in the Philosopher's Stone mystery all the more striking. It's as if a statue suddenly turned to speak. In cutting Binns from the film, the adaptation leans more heavily on action and visual storytelling, leaving little room for the quieter absurdities that define Rowling's world. Film is a different medium, certainly, and some omissions are necessary. But Binns is not just filler. His inclusion would have added depth to the classroom experience of Hogwarts, showing that even the most seemingly pointless lectures might hold the keys to ancient secrets. The idea that even a boring ghost teacher could be the bearer of vital information reinforces a key theme of the series. Knowledge, even when buried under layers of monotony, has value. Moreover, Binns provides a tonal balance to the darker elements beginning to emerge in the story. The Philosopher's Stone plot begins to unveil sinister threats, Voldemort's return, the danger hidden within Hogwarts itself. Binns, with his unintentional comedy and detachment, offers a moment of levity. His deadpan dismissal of the stone as poppycock contrasts with the seriousness the students assign to it. This tension between what the adults ignore and what the children uncover is central to the series' charm, and Binns exemplifies that dynamic. Number 17, Harry and Snape. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the relationship between Harry Potter and Professor Severus Snape is painted with broad, shadowy strokes. From the first moment Snape appears on screen, he is a menacing presence, draped in black robes, eyes narrowed with disdain, his voice cutting through the classroom like a cold draught. The audience immediately perceives him as a villain in waiting, an antagonist cloaked in mystery. Yet the film never truly delves into the mechanics of this hostility. Why does Snape glare at Harry with such intensity? Why do his words sting like poison? The film gives no answer, it merely invites us to feel the tension, not to understand it. The complexity of Snape's animosity is lost in cinematic silence, reduced to a theatrical sneer and a foreboding glance. The book, however, takes its time to construct this tension, to unfold the quiet drama behind each piercing look. In the very first potions class, J.K. Rowling does not settle for vague gestures or ominous lighting. She gives the reader an active seat in the room, showing us how Snape singles Harry out, not just with looks, but with calculated humiliation. He asks Harry questions he cannot possibly answer, punishing him not for ignorance, but for being James Potter's son. Snape's disdain is personal, although Harry cannot yet grasp why. The boy has barely arrived at Hogwarts, barely had time to learn what a bezoar is or how to pronounce wolfsbane. Yet Snape treats him as a rival. During that infamous lesson, Snape's venom drips with every word. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" he demands. Harry, blindsided, stammers helplessly. The questions continue, relentless, obscure. Snape does not teach, he interrogates, and when Hermione tries to help, her raised hand trembling with eagerness, Snape coldly ignores her, choosing instead to belittle Harry. He accuses him of arrogance, a thirst for attention, but the irony lies in the truth. Harry wanted no such spotlight. The hostility feels so unearned that it deepens the mystery. This moment plants the seed of suspicion. Harry, who until now had faced trolls and Dudleys, now encounters something far more unsettling: injustice. It is not a faceless threat or an obvious villain. It is a teacher, someone who should protect, mentor, and nurture. The reader is invited into Harry's mind to feel the sting of being singled out unfairly, to wonder why this adult, cloaked in authority, holds such a deep-rooted grudge. The sense of wrongness haunts Harry, making him watch Snape more closely, interpreting every gesture through the lens of suspicion. And so, when the events surrounding the Philosopher's Stone begin to unravel, Snape becomes the prime suspect, not because he glares, but because the reader has witnessed a series of subtle, calculated acts. The book lets us walk beside Harry as he notices Snape's behavior at the Quidditch match, sees him muttering under his breath. "He's jinxing the broomstick!" Hermione cries, and we believe it, not because we saw an evil smirk in a dark corner, but because the groundwork has been laid. Snape has already been portrayed as a man who loathes Harry, who has punished him without cause, who prowls the corridors with secrets clinging to his robes like dust. These suspicions build gradually. When Hagrid accidentally mentions that Snape is one of the professors protecting the stone, Harry's thoughts spiral. Why would someone who despises him be entrusted with such a task? When Snape is found limping after the Halloween incident, Harry and Ron leap to conclusions. Every tiny moment, Snape's icy tone, his cutting remarks, his strange absences, becomes a brick in the wall of suspicion. The book does not need to shout its theories. It lets the evidence accumulate like snow before a storm. Contrast this with the film, where such details are trimmed or erased entirely. Snape's leg injury is barely mentioned. The classroom scene is abbreviated, the question simplified, the tension glossed over. Without this build-up, the film leans heavily on atmosphere and Alan Rickman's masterful performance to carry the weight. And while Rickman does craft an unforgettable Snape, silky-voiced and sharp-eyed, the character's complexity is not fully explored. The viewer is left with intuition, not information. Even the scene in the Forbidden Forest where Harry overhears Snape talking to Quirrell loses its nuance on screen. In the book, the dialogue is cryptic, yet layered. The reader, like Harry, tries to interpret it through the lens of accumulated suspicion. Is Snape threatening Quirrell, demanding loyalty, planning something? The film simplifies this tension, hinting at darkness without anchoring it in prior behavior. The result is a version of Snape who appears suspicious because the music swells ominously, not because we've seen the history of his bitterness and actions unfold with clarity. Snape's rivalry with Harry is not merely a plot device in the book, it is a slow-burning psychological thread. Rowling lets the reader feel the discomfort of being targeted unfairly, of sensing hidden motives in a world where everything is still new and unfamiliar. Snape represents a kind of adult that children fear, the kind who decides who you are before you speak, who punishes you not for what you do, but for what you represent. You see what you expect to see, Dumbledore later says, and in Philosopher's Stone, the reader learns to see Snape through Harry's eyes, a cruel teacher, a lurking threat. It is also in the book that we begin to sense the depth of Snape's pain, though we don't understand it yet. His resentment is not irrational, it is deeply personal, born of past wounds and betrayals. But the genius of Rowling's narrative is that she does not reveal this too soon. She allows Snape to remain mysterious, even as she offers enough substance to make his actions plausible. When he deducts points from Gryffindor without cause, when he confiscates books or insults Neville's intelligence, it does not feel theatrical, it feels calculated, vengeful, rooted in something old and festering, Number 18, A Christmas Gift for Hermione. In the warm, enchanted corridors of Hogwarts, where magic wove itself through every tapestry and hallway, some of the most powerful spells were not found in a wand's flick, but in the quiet acts of friendship that bloomed between unlikely souls. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, one such moment, nestled delicately in the pages and often overlooked by those who know the story only through the sweeping visuals of the film, is the Christmas that Hermione Granger spent at Hogwarts, and the first true holiday gift she received not from family but from friends. It is a moment rich in heart, easily missed on the big screen, yet resonant in the quieter rhythm of the book's narration. When the snow began to fall around the castle towers and the great hall sparkled with enchanted icicles and a dozen glittering trees, most students packed their trunks and made their way home for Christmas. But not Hermione. She stayed behind, not by necessity, but by choice, perhaps sensing that there were things more important than familiar warmth. Her parents, Muggle dentists, would have welcomed her home, but Hermione was no longer the girl who left for Hogwarts in September. Her bond with the magical world was growing roots, and those roots had begun to wrap themselves around something far deeper than lessons and textbooks. They had begun to tangle with loyalty and friendship. For the troll incident in the girls' bathroom, Hermione had been isolated, brilliant, and determined, but painfully alone. She followed rules like they were a religion and treated her classmates with a cold precision that made it hard for them to like her. But that night, when Ron Weasley's thoughtless words reduced her to tears and she faced the mountain of a troll alone, Harry and Ron did something extraordinary. They risked their lives for someone they hardly knew. The friendship that grew from that moment was quiet and gradual in the book, stitched together not just by shared danger but by small, meaningful acts that shaped them into a trio that would one day change the world. The film adaptation, while capturing the excitement of the troll fight and the blossoming camaraderie that followed, did not give this transformation the same depth. In the movie, Hermione's place in the group feels almost transactional, her gratitude for being saved quickly becoming loyalty without the tender building blocks that the book offers. One of those blocks, a tiny, nearly invisible one in terms of plot, but massive in terms of emotional resonance, comes at Christmas. It's a moment where two boys who had never been known for their sensitivity give something to a girl who had always seemed beyond their understanding. A small, thoughtful gift that showed they saw her, not as a know-it-all, but as someone who deserved to feel wanted. Rowling writes with restraint, but care. Hermione had not been expecting anything from either of them, and was very touched. "Oh, thanks, Harry. And Ron?" She took the parcel and unwrapped it. This line, nestled in a few pages of Christmas cheer, may seem simple, but it is one of the most human in the early chapters of their relationship. Hermione, who had always over-prepared, who answered every question and corrected every error, who tried so hard to prove she belonged in the magical world, had never received a real Christmas gift from friends. Her surprise isn't feigned, and her gratitude isn't merely polite. It is the dawning of something she's never experienced before: belonging. The gift itself, modest in nature, is not described in excessive detail. It wasn't about the object. It was about the intent. Harry and Ron, two boys often consumed with their own dramas and distractions, had noticed her loneliness. They had remembered that she was staying behind, alone in that vast castle of echoing staircases and draughty common rooms. And they had done something small but significant. They made sure she wasn't forgotten. The gift they gave her was more than an object wrapped in paper. It was a moment that told her, "You are one of us now." This nuance, though small on the surface, reveals an entire world of character development. It was not the kind of moment that translated well to screen, where pacing and visual spectacle often overtake subtle, emotional rhythms. In the film there is no gift, there is no acknowledgement of Hermione's solitary holiday, no quiet thank you that trembles with the unspoken weight of her past Christmases. What the viewer sees instead is a friendship that seems solidified after one act of bravery rather than nurtured with care and effort over time. The emotional investment, the slow weaving together of trust, empathy, and affection, is diluted in favor of magical hijinks and action beats. Yet it is in moments like these that the soul of Harry Potter lives. It's not only in the spells and wands, nor even in the epic confrontations with evil. It's in how characters learn to love, to care, and to choose each other. Hermione, who had always been brilliant but emotionally guarded, began to soften. Harry, who had never had anyone to give a gift to, learned the joy of giving. Ron, often insecure and overwhelmed by his large family, found pride in doing something thoughtful. They were growing not just into heroes, but into human beings capable of true friendship. It's easy to miss how radical this moment is for all three of them. For Harry, who spent 10 Christmases with the Dursleys in a cupboard under the stairs, holidays had always been a source of silent pain. This was the first year he ever received real presents, and yet instead of hoarding the joy for himself, he extended it to someone else. That shows a generosity rooted not in tradition, but in instinct. He knew what it was like to be overlooked. He recognized it in Hermione, and he responded with kindness. For Ron, who often felt invisible next to his brothers and sometimes even his best friend, this was a moment of asserting agency. He wasn't just Harry's sidekick, he was someone who could bring joy to another person. Giving a gift is a small rebellion against the feeling of insignificance. Ron gave Hermione more than a wrapped item, he gave her warmth, and in doing so found some for himself. And for Hermione it was a transformation. Her tears on Halloween had been private, unseen. But her joy at Christmas was shared, acknowledged. It signaled the shift from isolation to inclusion. And more than that, it humanized her in the eyes of the boys. She wasn't just the girl with her hand always in the air. She was someone with feelings, someone they could care about, someone they wanted to make happy. This event, though minuscule compared to the later dramas and battles they would face, planted a seed that grew into the indestructible loyalty between the three. The absence of this scene in the film leaves a subtle gap, one that a casual viewer might not notice, but that a reader will always feel. Without it, Hermione's connection to Harry and Ron appears functional rather than emotional. With it, the reader understands that their bond was not forged in a single heroic act, but layered together over time through empathy, thoughtfulness, and shared silences. Rowling's genius lies in these moments. The stories become real not because of dragons or trolls, but because of the way a girl's eyes light up when someone finally sees her. In the grand narrative of Wizards and Dark Lords, it is easy to overlook the power of a small, wrapped present exchange between 11-year-olds, but therein lies the real magic, the magic of being remembered, of being chosen, of being loved. So while the films captured much of the wonder and danger of the wizarding world, they sometimes lost sight of the gentler spells, the ones that shape hearts, not just history. The gift Hermione received that Christmas was not just a token. It was the beginning of a promise between friends that no one in this trio would be left behind again, not in dark corridors, not in duels, and certainly not at Christmas. Number 19. Hermione wasn't always a friend. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the bond between Harry, Ron, and Hermione appears to solidify in a single moment of bravery, the night of the troll. After they rescue Hermione from the mountain troll in the girls' bathroom, the trio is suddenly inseparable. However, in J.K. Rowling's original novel, this transformation is far from instantaneous. Hermione Granger does not begin the story as a friend, nor even as a likable classmate. She is in fact depicted as a know-it-all nuisance, someone who alienates herself from her peers through her eagerness to please teachers and her relentless pursuit of academic perfection. The film glosses over this slow and uncomfortable evolution, flattening a complex arc into a brief and overly convenient transition. When Hermione Granger first enters the story, she is introduced not as a potential friend, but as a disruption. Rowling paints her as overbearing and socially awkward. She corrects Ron's spell pronunciation without being asked, informs everyone that she's read all their schoolbooks cover to cover, and demonstrates her magical knowledge at every turn. Harry and Ron quickly grow tired of her attitude, perceiving her as someone who wants to outshine others rather than belong with them. Her constant quoting of textbooks and eagerness to gain favor with professors isolates her. In one telling moment, Rowling writes, Hermione Granger was not the sort of person who made friends easily. That sentence alone encapsulates her early role, not a member of the team, but someone on the outside looking in. There's a particularly significant moment that the book preserves, but the film nearly erases. In Chapter 10 on Halloween, Hermione overhears Ron mocking her cruelly. Frustrated with her constant superiority, Ron blurts out that it's no wonder she hasn't got any friends. The words strike deep. Though the movie uses this line, it omits the emotional aftermath. In the book, Hermione doesn't simply brush it off. She flees in tears and locks herself in the bathroom for the rest of the day, refusing to come out. Her absence goes unnoticed until the troll enters the castle. This emotional vulnerability, this real hurt, is essential to understanding Hermione as a person. She isn't just a walking encyclopedia. She's a lonely child, desperate to connect but clumsy in her efforts. It's this troll incident, accidental and terrifying, that begins to change everything. Not the fight itself, not the moment of physical danger, but what comes afterward. When Harry and Ron risk their safety to find Hermione and confront the troll, it becomes clear they see her as more than just an annoying classmate. They didn't go to save a friend, they went because it was the right thing to do. But the moment they stand between her and danger, something in her perception shifts too. It's not about heroism, it's about recognition. For the first time, someone has seen past her defenses and chosen to act on her behalf. After the chaos settles and the professors arrive, Hermione lies to protect the boys. She takes the blame, saying she had gone looking for the troll and they had simply come to rescue her. This moment marks a turning point not only in the plot, but in the relationships. Rowling writes, there are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. But it is the book's careful build-up, the isolation, the tears, the misjudgments, that makes this line resonate. In contrast, the film introduces her as irritating for mere moments, and then transitions almost instantly to camaraderie. Before this night, Harry's feelings toward Hermione are lukewarm at best. He finds her bossy, stiff, and sometimes unbearable. Ron is far more vocal in his dislike. Their early interactions are coloured by annoyance, not interest. Hermione's presence is a constant reminder of rules and reprimands. She reports others' misbehaviour, adheres rigidly to school guidelines, and raises her hand before anyone else can speak. For boys like Harry and Ron, who are still learning to navigate their freedom at Hogwarts, she represents exactly what they want to escape. This is why her shift into friendship feels so earned in the book, because it isn't built on convenience, but on transformation and mutual understanding. In the film, Hermione's arc is compressed into a single act of bravery and bonding. While this suits the cinematic pace, it deprives viewers of the deeper truth. Friendship, especially at a young age, doesn't bloom from one moment. It evolves through misunderstanding, hurt, trust, and ultimately, forgiveness. When Hermione walks back into the story after the troll episode, her interactions with Harry and Ron are subtly different. She no longer acts like she's in a competition. There's warmth where there was distance, laughter where there was tension. It's not a complete reversal, but a beginning. The book allows readers to sit with Hermione's loneliness, to see how her intelligence becomes a barrier rather than a bridge. When Ron insults her, it's not just childish cruelty, it's a culmination of their mutual inability to relate. But Hermione's reaction, her tears, her withdrawal, make it clear she feels every bit of that rejection. She's not indifferent to their opinions, she wants to be accepted, just as much as Harry wants to belong or Ron wants to be noticed. These are three very different children, each burdened by insecurity, slowly realizing they can be stronger together than apart. Hermione's struggle for friendship mirrors a common experience. Being smart, driven, and confident can sometimes backfire socially, especially in childhood. Rowling gives readers an honest depiction of what it's like to be the know-it-all and how that label can hurt. Her journey toward friendship is not about changing who she is, but learning how to open up, how to be vulnerable. Her choice to lie to protect Harry and Ron shows that she values them more than rules, a huge step for a girl who once believed school regulations were sacred. Another key difference the film fails to convey is how long it takes for Hermione to be fully accepted. Even after the troll incident, there are moments of friction. Ron and Hermione continue to clash. Harry, at times, acts as the buffer. But because we've seen the slow evolution in the book, these moments feel natural, not forced. The friendship grows not in leaps, but in steady steps. There are shared adventures, arguments, reconciliations. The trio's bond becomes strong because it is tested, not because it is convenient. Hermione's transition from outsider to insider enriches the story. It's not just a subplot, it's a reflection of the broader theme of belonging. Hogwarts is a place for outcasts, an orphaned boy, an overshadowed son, a girl who tries too hard. Together they find what they were missing. The book gives time to this growth, emphasizing how relationships require patience, empathy, and courage, not just in facing trolls, but in facing each other's flaws. In removing the tension and pain that precede the friendship, the film simplifies Hermione's character. She becomes the smart girl's sidekick, ready to help and always prepared. The complexity of her isolation, the sting of Ron's words, the depth of her loneliness, these are all lost in favor of pacing. But the readers remember. They remember the girl who cried in the bathroom on Halloween, who had no one to sit with, who felt every cold shoulder. And they remember the moment it changed, not because someone was heroic, but because someone cared. Hermione's early portrayal in the book also lays the groundwork for her later courage and loyalty. She isn't brave because she knows everything. She's brave because she chooses people over pride. This choice starts in that bathroom, continues in every rule she breaks for her friends, and ultimately defines her role in the trio. When readers reach the final chapters of the book, they understand why Hermione risks everything for Harry and Ron, because she remembers what it was like to have nothing at all. The troll scene, while dramatic, is merely a gateway. What truly cements the friendship is what comes after, the silent understanding, the shared glances, the inclusion in plans and laughter. Hermione, once a solitary figure with her hand always raised, becomes part of a unit. The book doesn't rush this. It honors the quiet moments, the growing trust, the awkward first steps toward closeness. The film, though magical, trades these for a quicker payoff. It is this quiet patience in Rowling's writing that makes the trio's friendship so beloved. It is not built on convenience, but on emotional truths. It reminds us that friendship is earned, not granted, that people can be annoying and still worthy of love, that sometimes all it takes is a troll in the bathroom to open the door to something more. But it also reminds us not to forget what came before, the isolation, the judgment, the longing. For it is in those early shadows that the light of friendship shines brightest. Number 20, the House Cup competition. At Hogwarts, the House Cup was not merely a trophy. It was a constant undercurrent of motivation, rivalry, and pride. Every moment in the castle halls, every glance between Gryffindors and Slytherins, every whispered conversation in the common rooms carried the weight of that competition. The book Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone imbued the house points system with a deep emotional presence. It was woven into daily life. Students lived and breathed house pride. It defined friendships, rivalries, and decisions. In contrast, the film barely brushed past this crucial thread, presenting the hourglasses of gemstones in the background, mentioning the house cup in passing, and then discarding it until the end. In the book, the tension between the houses is palpable from the moment Harry first sets foot in the Great Hall. When the Sorting Hat places him in Gryffindor, the cheers erupt not only from his new housemates, but with a sense of collective expectation. He has joined a lineage, a legacy, and a responsibility. Each of his actions, from sneaking out at night to standing up to Malfoy, is evaluated not just on a moral scale, but on how it will affect Gryffindor's standing in the House Cup. The stakes are set immediately, and they persist. This pressure mounts when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are caught returning from the Forbidden Corridor, leading to a devastating consequence. 50 points are taken from Gryffindor for each of them. The shame is intense. J.K. Rowling doesn't merely note the deduction, she captures the emotional fallout. Harry becomes a pariah overnight. First years glare at him in the corridors. He, the boy who lived, is now the boy who ruined Gryffindor's chances. The rest of the school didn't speak to them either, the book reads. People pointedly turned their backs on Harry. This social isolation becomes a turning point in his story, one entirely omitted in the movie. For Slytherin, the House Cup was not just a goal but a tradition. They had won for 6 years running. This dominance wasn't background information, it shaped the personalities and attitudes of students like Draco Malfoy and Pansy Parkinson. They carried themselves like champions, often throwing their victories into the faces of other students. Their sense of superiority wasn't unfounded, it was backed by a school-wide acknowledgement of their success. The green and silver banners in the Great Hall weren't decorative, they were emblems of power. The film fails to convey this history. It treats Slytherin's wins as a throwaway line, devoid of emotion or consequence. Neville Longbottom's moment at the end of the book, when Dumbledore awards him 10 points for standing up to his friends, seals Gryffindor's victory. But that gesture is far more than just a twist of fate. Throughout the story, Neville is the underdog. He struggles with magic, forgets passwords, loses his toad. Yet he shows true courage, the kind the book builds slowly through his growth. His 10 points are not just for an act of bravery, they are recognition of a boy who tried despite fear and self-doubt. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, Dumbledore says, but just as much to stand up to our friends. This moment is pivotal in the book's emotional arc. The film, however, compresses this triumph, delivering it with little build-up and minimal weight. The lead-up to the final point, Tally, is an escalating emotional storm in the novel. As the Great Hall prepares for the end-of-year feast, the walls are decked in green. The implication is clear. Slytherin has won again. There is gloating, jeering, and satisfaction from the Slytherin table. The reader feels the bitterness with Harry and his friends as they sit beneath emerald banners. But then Dumbledore begins his slow, deliberate reversal. First to Ron, then Hermione, then Harry, and finally to Neville. Each award shocks the crowd and shifts the energy in the hall. Gryffindor overtakes Slytherin by a mere 10 points. The hall erupts. Gryffindor had won the House Cup. It is a cathartic, earned climax. The emotional trajectory that Rowling crafts through the house points is a masterclass in narrative structure. At the start, Gryffindor gains points, Harry becomes a hero, then catastrophe, points are lost, he becomes hated, redemption comes slowly through courage and sacrifice. When victory arrives, it is not because the main characters were protagonists, it is because they chose right over wrong, bravery over comfort. The film, constrained by time or perhaps imagination, reduces this arc to a few sentences and a shot of the hourglasses tipping. In the book, the house points are not abstract numbers. They are described in vivid detail. The hourglasses filled with rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds are not just props, but visual manifestations of effort and morality. When points are added or deducted, students stop in the halls to watch. It is a spectacle. 10 points from Gryffindor rings out like a public judgment. Students react emotionally, cheering, booing, sulking. These reactions shape the social fabric of Hogwarts. The film never captures this tension. The hourglasses appear without context and are forgotten quickly. Hermione's moment with the Devil's Snare is another example. Her use of logic and knowledge allows the trio to progress toward the Philosopher's Stone. In the book, this intelligence is praised by Dumbledore and contributes to her points. For the use of cool logic in the face of fire, I award Hermione Granger 50 points. It validates her role in the group, not as the token smart girl, but as an equal, whose mind is a weapon just as powerful as Harry's bravery. The film fails to tie this moment to house points or larger consequences, treating it as a minor puzzle solved. Even the professors take the House Cup seriously in the book. Professor McGonagall is visibly disappointed when Gryffindor loses points. Snape is smug when Slytherin gains. The teacher's biases and pride are interwoven into the system, making it feel real. Dumbledore himself waits until the last moment to change the outcome, not because he's being theatrical, but because he is delivering justice in a way that resonates. He knows the power of public recognition. The film glosses over these nuances, showing Dumbledore's final awards without the necessary build-up or emotional release. Throughout the book, every action has weight. When Harry captures the Remembrall, he gains points. When they sneak out, they lose them. When Neville forgets passwords, he doesn't just face ridicule, he hurts his house. This persistent link between behavior and consequence trains the reader to care. By the time the final feast arrives, the numbers mean something. Gryffindor's win is not a surprise twist, it's a hard-fought victory. The movie lacks this foundational groundwork. The House Cup finale feels tacked on, not earned. Ron's contribution is equally important. His skill at chess allows the trio to get through one of the last obstacles guarding the Philosopher's Stone. This is not a frivolous win. It is portrayed in the book as a great act of bravery and strategy. Dumbledore rewards him with 50 points, acknowledging that heroism comes in many forms. "The best played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years," he says. That moment in the book elevates Ron from comic relief to hero. In the film, this is barely acknowledged. The competitive atmosphere in the book affects even minor characters. Percy Weasley constantly reminds the younger students about the importance of house points. Fred and George play pranks but know exactly how far to go before points are docked. Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws strategize quietly. The entire school is in on the game. The film reduces this world to a vague rivalry between Gryffindor and Slytherin, sidelining the complexity and richness that the book offers. Perhaps the most powerful difference lies in how readers versus viewers feel at the end. In the book, the reader cheers for Gryffindor, not because they are the heroes, but because they grew, suffered, and overcame. The House Cup becomes a symbol of that journey. The film, however, treats it as an afterthought, delivering it in the final minutes with no prior emotional setup. It's a missed opportunity. K. Rowling understood that stories thrive on stakes. The House Cup in Philosopher's Stone is a microcosm of the battle between good and evil, courage and conformity, choice and consequence. By cutting this emotional infrastructure, the film lost an essential element of the Hogwarts experience. The reader walks away from the book feeling the weight of every point won and lost. The viewer of the film, sadly, barely remembers them at all. Number 21. First meeting with Quirrell. In the bustling warmth of the leaky cauldron, where soot mingled with the aroma of butterbeer and old oak beams groaned with age, young Harry Potter stepped into the wizarding world for the very first time. He was overwhelmed, awestruck, still clinging to the lingering disbelief that this was not a dream. But what Harry did not realize as he was being introduced to wizards and witches one by one was that among the kind smiles and curious glances, evil had already found a way to brush against his life. It happened quietly, without theatrics. It happened when Professor Quirrell extended his hand and Harry took it. No fanfare, no chill down the spine, just a brief handshake between a boy and a man with a lurking horror hidden behind a simple turban. In the book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, J.K. Rowling chose to place Quirrell in this seemingly benign scene early in the story. It was subtle, almost forgettable, but significant. This was not the stuttering, fragile man we would come to fear and distrust later. Here, in this dusty pub, filled with Hogwarts staff, he was just another teacher, Professor Quirrell, who'd been at Hogwarts for a year already. According to the book, Hagrid introduced him casually. "And this is Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "He'll be your defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts." And with a nod, the moment passed, the seed of unease planted invisibly in the background. In the film adaptation, this encounter is completely erased. There is no leaky cauldron meeting. Instead, Quirrell's introduction is delayed until the sorting ceremony, and when he appears, he is a trembling figure, speaking in halting sentences, eyes darting under the shadow of his turban. The cinematic version reduces him immediately to a caricature of anxiety, removing the quiet, creeping dread that Rowling had carefully embedded in the book. The audience is immediately trained to be suspicious, to regard him as weak, untrustworthy, or odd. But the book does something much more sinister. It lets him blend in. The genius of Rowling's original scene lies in its deceptive normalcy. The reader, like Harry, sees Quirrell as nothing more than a nervous academic. There's no sign, no mark, no warning. The hand he extends is not yet tainted by the evil that will soon reside beneath the turban. It is this disarming mundanity that makes the later revelations so chilling. When Harry meets Quirrell again in the final chambers of the Sorcerer's Stone, it retroactively redefines that first handshake. The idea that Voldemort was already present, possibly observing through Quirrell's eyes, gives that small moment an eerie, retrospective weight. This contrast between book and film highlights a deeper difference in how suspense is constructed. The movie seeks to foreshadow Quirrell's villainy through visual and behavioral cues. From his very first scene, the viewer is prompted to distrust him. His stammer, his avoidance of eye contact, and the conspicuous turban immediately mark him as someone hiding something. But in the book, Rowling relies not on superficial traits but on quiet layering. She introduces Quirrell as harmless, allowing him to weave into the background of Harry's first encounters, and only later does the mask fall away. The deliberate misdirection of Quirrell's first appearance in the book is a testament to Rowling's storytelling craft. By inserting him early, by having him physically touch Harry in a setting of comfort and safety, she makes his eventual betrayal far more disturbing. We are meant to trust this man, or at the very least, ignore him. When it is revealed that he has been serving Voldemort all along, we are forced to question every previous interaction. Did Voldemort feel the boy's touch through Quirrell's palm? Did he flinch? Did he feel pain even then? In Chapter 5 of the book, the brief meeting is almost swallowed by the noise of the pub, but it is written with precision. Rowling writes, Professor Quirrell, in his ridiculous turban, was drinking a glass of mead and chatting with a toothless old wizard. This throwaway description betrays nothing, yet invites scrutiny in hindsight. Why was the turban already there? Was Voldemort already sharing Quirrell's body? Or had the process begun, unseen, in whispers and dreams? The timeline remains ambiguous, and that ambiguity serves the tone of mystery that permeates the first book. The absence of this scene from the film strips away a key narrative mechanism. The viewer is never lulled into a sense of ease regarding Quirrell. There is no opportunity for trust, no foundation for betrayal. The moment Harry sees him, he is marked, but in the book, the betrayal is not merely of Harry's trust, it is a betrayal of the reader's assumptions. The leaky cauldron scene plays like a sleight of hand, a quiet magic trick that only reveals its secret at the end of the story, forcing the reader to flip back and reread. Now, understanding the true horror behind the turban. There is also a symbolic weight to that handshake. In Christian tradition, the concept of evil masquerading as good, of the devil appearing in disguise, is deeply rooted. Quirrell, at that point in the book, is still a teacher, still a figure of supposed guidance. The handshake is a gesture of acceptance, a passing of trust from child to adult. But under that skin, evil watches. The idea that Harry unknowingly welcomed the enemy with an open hand sets a haunting precedent for the rest of the series. Evil is rarely where it seems. This approach aligns with one of Rowling's central themes, that danger often comes cloaked in politeness, intelligence, or even mentorship. Quirrell is the prototype of this lesson, predating even the subtle manipulations of Gilderoy Lockhart or the veiled threats of Dolores Umbridge. In many ways, the leaky cauldron moment is the first in a long series of deceptions Harry will face. And unlike the exaggerated portrayal in the film, where danger is always paired with creepy music or dark lighting, the book teaches its readers to look closer, to question what is hidden beneath the surface. By omitting this scene, the film loses a layer of moral complexity. It favors spectacle over subtlety. In the movie, Harry never willingly offers his hand to the man who will try to kill him. That bond, however brief, is erased. There is no early interaction to be tainted later, no shock to recall with dread. It is a cleaner narrative but less resonant. The horror lies not in the confrontation, but in the realization that the confrontation had already begun without anyone noticing. One might argue that the film sacrifices depth for clarity, especially for a younger audience, but in doing so it misses the opportunity to instill a more profound sense of betrayal. Rowling's Quirrell is not merely a pawn, he is a man who once chose to extend his hand in false goodwill, a man who allowed evil to live inside him, literally. That kind of transformation demands a beginning, and the leaky cauldron handshake is that beginning. In hindsight, the reader understands the brilliance of that small, casual touch. Quirrell, polite and smiling, offering his hand not just as a teacher but as a mask. It is a moment that encapsulates the quiet dread of the unknown. Voldemort did not announce his return with thunder or smoke. He came as a whisper, as a turban, as a teacher. He came in daylight, in public, in a pub full of people too enchanted to see the shadow in their midst. Even more chilling is the thought that perhaps Quirrell already knew who Harry was. Perhaps Voldemort, lurking just beneath the surface, felt something unusual during that handshake. In the final chapter, when Voldemort snarls, he lies. He is weak. Through Quirrell's body, we are reminded that their bond was more than mere possession. It was intimate, physical, tactile. And that first handshake, so harmless at the time, was the first contact between the boy who lived and the man who refused to die. It is a literary trick, an elegant deception that only works when the reader forgets it happened at all. Rowling plants it like a seed, buried deep in the middle of a whimsical chapter. Only when the flower blooms in the climax do we realize what was sown. The film's decision to cut this moment removes the sting. It removes the human element, the idea that the path to darkness begins not with thunder, but with a handshake in a quiet room. Number 22, Harry's search for his parents. In the pages of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the question of Harry's parents, who they were, what they were like, what they meant, hangs over him like a shadow he can't quite touch, a haunting melody with no known source. From the earliest chapters, Rowling weaves James and Lily Potter into the fabric of Harry's longing and loneliness. He doesn't just miss them, he aches to understand them, to reclaim even a small piece of a life he never truly knew. This emotional undercurrent runs deep in the book, shaping Harry's thoughts, his questions, his wonder. Yet in the film, this theme fades into the background, flattened into a few brief glances at family photos or fleeting mentions of loss. The screen trades emotion for momentum, leaving behind the inner world of a boy whose entire identity is a mystery even to himself. When Hagrid first appears in the book, crashing through the door of the hut on the rock, he doesn't only deliver a letter, he brings answers. Harry, whose relatives have deliberately hidden every scrap of his past, listens to Hagrid not with surprise alone, but with hunger. His first real question isn't about magic, but about truth. "Who are my parents?" he asks again and again, in subtle and explicit ways throughout the novel. Rowling never lets this question go unanswered for long. She plants clues everywhere, in whispers from professors, in the looks Harry receives, in the mirror that reflects the deepest desire of his heart. The film, in contrast, races ahead to Diagon Alley, to spells and Quidditch, to trolls and trapdoors, touching only lightly on the emotional weight Harry carries inside him. In the book, when Hagrid takes Harry to Diagon Alley, the visit isn't just a wonderland of magical shops and goblins. It is Harry's first true connection to the world his parents once lived in. Hagrid pauses in front of the shop where Lily bought her wand. He explains that James was an excellent Quidditch player. Harry listens, wide-eyed, not just because he's learning about magic, but because he's discovering pieces of his parents through the crumbs left behind in other people's memories. The film shows Harry's excitement, but doesn't linger on these subtle discoveries. It omits the aching pauses, the weighted silences, the sense that every new fact about magic is, for Harry, also a step closer to James and Lily. Perhaps the most poignant moment in the book, one that the film adapts but never fully explores, is the arrival of the photo album. After the battle with Voldemort and the stone is safe, Hagrid gives Harry a leather-bound book filled with pictures of his parents. The gesture, simple and heartfelt, reduces Harry to silence in the book. He turns the pages slowly, tracing his mother's smile, his father's messy hair, looking not at strangers but at ghosts made real. The film includes this scene but treats it with brevity, a touching yet fleeting image. In the novel it feels sacred, one of the few physical links Harry has to the people he comes from. Rowling doesn't need to say more. The image of a boy holding pictures of a family he lost before memory took root is more powerful than a dozen lines of dialogue. Earlier in the story, at Hogwarts, Harry's desire to know his parents doesn't fade. It deepens. He isn't just caught up in magical lessons and secret corridors. He watches Dumbledore closely, listens when McGonagall mentions his father, and grows curious about the kind of people his parents were. During one potions lesson, Snape sneers at him not as a student, but as James's son. This sharpens the mystery even more. What did James do to earn such hatred? What was he like as a boy? Why does Snape's voice shake with contempt? These are questions the film hints at but never truly asks. In Rowling's writing, every slight, every comment, every look adds to the mosaic Harry is building in. His mind trying to reconstruct the past through shattered fragments. Even the mirror of Erised, which makes it into the film with all its emotional force, holds a deeper meaning in the novel. Harry doesn't just see his parents and feel joy, he becomes obsessed. Night after night, he sneaks back to the room just to see them again. Rowling writes, he had to see them, had to be with them. The desire is not whimsical, it is desperate. He studies their faces, trying to memorize every feature. He watches their movements, trying to guess their personalities. The mirror becomes not just a magical object, but a lifeline to the family he never knew. The film shows Harry's tears and longing, but it does not capture the depth of this silent mourning. It does not linger on the slow, cold walk through the corridors, or the tremble in Harry's hand as he reaches for a reflection that disappears. Throughout the book, Harry seeks out those who knew his parents, hoping, perhaps unconsciously, that they will fill in the gaps left in his soul. He asks McGonagall questions she doesn't fully answer. He studies the photograph of the old Order of the Phoenix that Hagrid includes in the album. He listens intently when anyone talks about Lily's kindness or James's bravery. These moments are small but deeply revealing. They show a child reaching out through time and silence, trying to stitch together a sense of belonging from the scraps others offer him. The film skips these interactions or treats them as background, a soft haze behind the roar of adventure. One of the most touching examples of Harry's internal grief in the book comes during Christmas. When Ron receives gifts from his family, Harry feels a pang, not of jealousy, but of distance. He does not expect anything because he has no one to expect anything from. When he does receive gifts from Mrs. Weasley, from Dumbledore, it's not just a kind gesture, it's a small flicker of warmth in a life built on cold absence. The film includes Christmas at Hogwarts, but it is painted in bright, festive tones. It does not show Harry sitting quietly by the fire, holding the sweater Mrs. Weasley knitted by hand and realizing someone thought of him. In the book, these details matter. They are part of a larger emotional tapestry where every kindness echoes louder because of the emptiness that surrounds it. The desire to know his parents is never about idolization. Harry doesn't imagine them as flawless heroes. He wants to know their faults, their dreams, their jokes. He wants to hear stories, to be told that James was arrogant or that Lily laughed too loudly. He craves the mundane as much as the extraordinary, because those are the things that make people real. In the film, the Potters are more myth than memory, tragic figures shown in flashbacks, almost too perfect. In the book, Rowling gives them humanity through others' memories, and through Harry's longing to know them not as symbols, but as parents. When Harry meets Neville and learns of the Longbottom's tragedy, it doesn't just deepen the story, it deepens Harry's sense of kinship. He realizes he is not the only one scarred by the past. This quiet understanding adds weight to his own grief. The film brushes past this moment. The book, however, allows it to resonate. It becomes another thread in Harry's emotional world, a recognition that loss shapes many lives at Hogwarts, not just his own. Even his developing friendship with Sirius Black, which blossoms in later books, has its roots here. The absence of family in Philosopher's Stone makes the future appearance of a godfather so powerful. The foundation for that hunger is laid early. In Harry's questions, his stares at the mirror, his quiet watching of others. The film never sets this groundwork. It doesn't allow the viewer to fully understand why Harry clings to Sirius so fiercely later on. But the book does. It prepares the soil long before the seed is planted. Rowling crafts Harry's loneliness not as a theme, but as a lived experience. Every corridor he walks alone, every whisper he overhears, every glance he gives to families reuniting at King's Cross, these moments build a boy defined not by what he has, but by what he's missing. The film captures the broad strokes of Harry's loss, but smooths over the details. It favors spectacle over sorrow, action over ache. This is not to say the film fails completely. It shows Harry staring into the mirror, gives us a glimpse of the album, touches on the mystery. But it does so quickly without the lingering focus that gives the book its heart. The emotional journey is there, but blurred, softened. Where Rowling gives us sharp corners and quiet rooms filled with pain, the movie offers silhouettes and soft lights. What the book understands, and what the film largely forgets, is that for Harry, learning magic is not just an adventure, it's a return. Every spell, every creature, every name is part of a world that once held his parents. The story is not only about defeating evil, but about recovering memory, about walking backward through darkness toward a light he never saw, but always believed existed. And in that quiet search through pages of old photos and whispered stories, Harry finds something more powerful than any spell, a connection to love that never truly left him. Number 23, Secret Conversations Between Teachers. In J.K. Rowling's original Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone unfolds not through exposition, but through overheard whispers, suspicious glances, and tense conversations caught by children lurking in the shadows. This method of storytelling breathes life into the narrative, granting Harry, Ron, and Hermione the role of amateur detectives rather than passive participants. Yet when the story was adapted to film, many of these rich, secretive moments were omitted, erasing the intricate web of uncertainty that once surrounded the Philosopher's Stone and those who might be seeking it for their own dark purposes. One of the most chilling and pivotal moments in the book occurs when Harry stumbles upon a private conversation between Professor Snape and Professor Quirrell deep in the Forbidden Forest after a Quidditch match. The passage is cloaked in tension, leaving the reader breathless with suspicion. Snape, according to Harry's view, from behind the trees, appears to be threatening Quirrell. "You don't want me as your enemy, Quirrell," he says, with unmistakable menace. Harry hears just enough to become convinced that Snape is pressuring the timid defense against the dark arts teacher to assist him in stealing the stone. The reader is drawn into Harry's confusion, fear, and determination to understand what's really going on. The mystery deepens. But this intense, ambiguous scene is absent from the movie, replaced with far more straightforward storytelling that tells rather than reveals. The removal of this conversation in the film silences one of the key ways Harry and the audience are led to suspect Snape. Without this moment, Snape becomes suspicious largely because of how he looks and acts rather than what he does. In the book, Rowling carefully crafts a web of misdirection, leading both Harry and the reader down a false trail. Snape's threats to Quirrell, his mysterious injury after the troll incident, and his antagonistic behavior all serve a greater purpose: to build a false narrative that is unraveled only at the very end. In the film, this unraveling lacks the same impact because the initial suspicions were never as deeply planted. Another missing piece of the puzzle lies in the way the book presents overheard conversations as revelations rather than exposition. Early on, Hagrid unwittingly reveals to Harry and his friends the existence of Fluffy, the three-headed dog, and the fact that he belongs to Dumbledore. More importantly, Hagrid lets slip the crucial detail that the creature is guarding something hidden at Hogwarts. "That's top secret, that is," he says after realizing he's said too much. In the book, this moment is a turning point, a breadcrumb that launches the trio's first real investigation into what is being protected and why. In the movie, while Fluffy still exists, the subtle unraveling of the mystery through such casual conversations is lost. Instead, events are revealed in more linear, simplistic terms that don't require the audience to question or connect the dots. The way Rowling allows children to learn through subtext and deduction is one of the most powerful devices in the book. Consider the conversation they overhear between Snape and Filch after Harry's first Quidditch match, when Snape is found with a bleeding leg. Though brief, it adds to the growing sense that Snape is hiding something, especially when paired with Harry's memory of Fluffy and the trapdoor. "Snape must have tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween," Harry deduces, the sense of danger growing steadily in his mind. These small pieces are not just clues to a mystery, they are evidence of how children perceive the world through fragments, forming theories and suspicions without adult guidance. This sense of discovery is vital to the book's magic and is largely flattened in the film. Even Professor McGonagall, often a secondary figure in the movie's narrative, is given a richer, more nuanced presence in the book through subtle details and brief, overheard remarks. When she expresses concern about Harry playing as Seeker, it's not just about school rules or safety, it's laced with something deeper, something protective. Her tone and behavior are passed by the children, not explained outright. "I've never seen anything like it before," she says of Harry's flying ability. But there's something in the way she watches him, a careful calculation. These moments give McGonagall layers that the film does not explore, reducing her to a more rigid, rule-following caricature instead of a deeply observant protector, with her own quiet worries about the boy who lived. A key reason the film struggles to replicate the book's intrigue is that it shifts the narrative center from the children's experience of piecing together a mystery to a more adult-driven progression of events. In the book, the children are active agents, gathering clues, debating theories, and interpreting overheard conversations with the seriousness of detectives on a case. They eavesdrop, follow professors through corridors, and even set traps of their own to uncover truths. The magic is not only in spells and potions, but in discovery. The film, however, hands them the answers far more freely, lessening the impact of their victories and the depth of their fears. When Harry and his friends visit Hagrid before Christmas, they discover yet another key detail thanks to Hagrid's loose tongue. Over mugs of tea and rock cakes, Hagrid lets slip that a stranger gave him a dragon egg in a pub, and that he may have accidentally told the stranger how to get past Fluffy. This moment, laced with humour and tension in the book, is crucial in clarifying that someone is actively trying to break through the stone's defences. The children's realization that Hagrid was tricked and that danger is imminent is earned through listening, deduction, and bravery. In the movie, this information is reduced to a brief encounter, cutting out the complex build-up that gave the revelation its full weight. Even their decision to descend through the trapdoor and protect the stone themselves is deeply rooted in all they've overheard and uncovered. Hermione's insistence that there are some things worth breaking the rules for only resonates because we've followed them through a journey of clues and secrets. Each overheard whisper, each suspicious glance adds urgency and meaning to their final act of courage. The movie, in rushing through the earlier revelations, makes this climax feel less like the result of careful investigation and more like a reaction to a sudden threat. Another scene, left on the cutting room floor, is the one in which the trio encounters Professor Snape just before Christmas, when he quizzes them on what they are doing out of bed. The tension in this scene, and Harry's growing belief that Snape is on the brink of seizing the stone, creates an atmosphere of creeping danger. The fact that Snape is often present near places where things go wrong, such as the broken broomstick incident or guarding the corridor on the 3rd floor, builds a case against him in Harry's mind. This pattern of behavior is more subtly and cleverly laid in the book, giving the reader space to form the same conclusions Harry does. What the book accomplishes so effectively is giving children the ability to interpret adult behavior, to see beneath the surface. In a world dominated by powerful figures, Dumbledore, Snape, Quirrell, the children are rarely told the truth outright. They must assemble it from fragments. This reflects the real experience of childhood, where adults speak in riddles and answers are often hidden behind closed doors. The movie does not embrace this reality, choosing instead to simplify motivations and offer fewer layers to explore. The book's pacing also allows for these overheard conversations to have emotional weight. Each one is a puzzle piece placed carefully in the narrative. The reader senses that there is a larger picture forming, but like Harry, is often unsure of what it means until the final reveal. When it is finally revealed that Quirrell, not Snape, is the real villain, the twist feels earned. The clues were there all along, buried in whispered words and secretive glances. The movie, by contrast, hurries toward the conclusion, delivering the twist without the same layered build-up. Harry's character is deeply shaped by these moments of spying and listening. He is a boy who has never been given answers, who has learned to read between the lines to survive. His suspicion of Snape, his concern for Hagrid, his trust in Dumbledore, all of it is shaped by what he hears, not what he's told. The absence of these elements in the film robs Harry of his developing instincts and critical thinking. It makes him more reactive than proactive, more hero by circumstance than hero by choice. Ultimately, the book's greatest strength lies in its trust in the reader to follow the threads. Rowling never assumes the audience needs everything explained. She plants seeds and allows them to grow slowly. The children's overheard conversations are not just scenes. They are instruments of narrative progression, character development, and mystery. By removing them, the film loses not only suspense, but also the very sense of wonder that makes the discovery of the Philosopher's Stone feel like a triumph of courage, curiosity, and friendship. Number 24, Ron the Chessmaster. In the dim, echoing chamber where stone figures loomed like silent sentinels of a forgotten war, Ron Weasley stood not as a scared schoolboy but as a commander surveying his battlefield. This was no ordinary game of chess. It was wizard's chess, violent, destructive, and entirely real. In the film Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, this moment passed quickly, with Ron making a noble sacrifice almost in haste. Yet in the book, J.K. Rowling slows time down and in doing so allows Ron to shine like never before. For once, he wasn't just Harry's sidekick or Hermione's comic foil. He was the strategist, the leader, and the one holding the weight of 3 lives in his hands. The stone chamber pulsed with danger. Every square of the board could bring pain or death. Unlike in the film, where the entire sequence is rushed, barely granting Ron a minute to think, the book gives him room to breathe and command. Ron didn't leap into the saddle of the knight impulsively. First, he assessed. He looked at the positions, observed how the enchanted pieces reacted, and pieced together the rules of this deadly game. As Rowling describes, "Ron, you know how to play, right?" And Ron, with more calm than his 11 years should allow, began to direct the board. He didn't panic, he didn't hesitate. He analyzed, predicted, and calculated the risks of every potential move. Harry and Hermione were not participants. They became mere passengers, observers in Ron's grand campaign. He told them where to go and what to do, commanding the board with authority, almost like Professor McGonagall herself when she scolds a late student. Rowling crafted this moment not as an impulsive stunt, but as a climax to something long simmering inside Ron, his longing to be seen, to be essential, to matter. With 6 older brothers, all extraordinary in some way, Ron had grown used to being overlooked. But here, in this underground chamber, he was the center of the strategy. The boy with hand-me-down robes was giving orders to queens and bishops and carving a path to survival. Each move was deliberate. Ron used his knowledge of wizard's chess, not just as a game, but as an instinctive language. In the book, Rowling describes how the pieces shattered each other, how they obeyed Ron's commands without question. He was no longer just Ron from Gryffindor. He was the king of this battlefield. He made the decisions, and each command he gave brought them closer to the final square. It was a grueling mental exercise with the stakes impossibly high. There was no hint of movie-style bravado, no dramatic music, just the boy, the board, and the burden of strategy. One of the most powerful elements in the book is how Ron's sacrifice emerges not as a grand cinematic flourish, but as the final step in a methodical plan. After calculating every move, he didn't just throw himself into danger, he saw the necessity of his own elimination in order for Harry to proceed. As the narration reveals, "I'll have to be taken," said Ron quietly. This was not a shout of triumph, it was a quiet, logical realization. There was no other way forward. His voice is calm because the decision was made with clarity, not drama, and that in itself was more heroic than any swelling orchestral score. This was not a moment of impulse, but of understanding. Ron understood that the knight had to fall, and he was the knight. He didn't look to Harry for confirmation or to Hermione for a spell. He didn't need permission. He knew what had to be done and simply did it. His sacrifice wasn't only brave, it was brilliant. It was the move of a chess master who had read the board 5 steps ahead. The film skips over all this. It compresses Ron's greatness into a quick, dramatic action beat. But the book lets him shine. Even the descriptions in the book pay tribute to Ron's growth in this scene. The board is described in rich detail, its tension thick in the air. The battle plays out like a war story, with Ron directing real destruction. When he climbs onto the knight, It is not with haste, but with resolve. Rowling doesn't rush his climb. She lets the reader absorb the weight of that moment. "Do you want to stop Snape or not?" Ron said, fiercely. He knew they were racing against time, but that did not make him reckless. He balanced speed with thought, daring with logic. He was the tactician in the trio, even if it was rarely acknowledged. Perhaps the most heartbreaking and telling detail is how Hermione reacts afterward. When Ron is struck and collapses, it is not just the pain of a friend falling, it is the horror of losing the one who carried them through the trap. He wasn't just a participant, he was the one who made their advance possible. His fall was the price of strategy, a calculated cost for victory. Rowling writes, "There was already a lump forming on his forehead where the White Knight had hit him. They had to leave him there." That cold detail, the lump, the injury, the forced abandonment, underlines the sacrifice. It wasn't glamorous, it was painful, and yet it was what had to be done. Harry may have been the hero of the story, but in this moment, he followed. Hermione, for all her intellect, remained silent. The spotlight was Ron's, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. His decisions, rooted in logic and honed through experience, were what unlocked the next stage of the journey. This moment is a culmination of Ron's internal arc, a boy so often in the background, finally proving his value not with a wand, but with his mind. There is also a tragic beauty in the way Ron doesn't bask in glory. He doesn't get to hear Harry or Hermione praising him. He is unconscious by the time their mission continues. His brilliance isn't celebrated with a crowd. It is felt in their footsteps moving forward, in the silence that hangs after the clash of chess pieces fades. And that is the essence of real heroism, not the cheers, but the quiet aftermath. Rowling shows us a Ron who gave everything, expecting nothing. The film, with all its visual flair, misses this essence. By cutting the chess game short, it slices through the layers of character development. Moviegoers see a brave boy on a knight. Readers see a commander at war, sacrificing himself after a series of brilliant plays. The compression of events in the movie erases the nuances. It becomes a scene about action, not thought, about courage, not strategy. But in the book, strategy is the very soul of Ron's moment. There is a reason this scene has lingered in the memories of readers long after they finish the first book. It's not just because of the danger or the magic, it's because of Ron. Because it finally lets us see what he can be. In a story filled with chosen ones, brilliant witches and dark lords, this red-haired boy from a poor family steps into greatness not through bloodlines or power, but through heart and intellect. And he does it when no one else can. That contrast, the brilliance of the book versus the simplicity of the film, is what truly divides the two versions. One gives Ron the moment he deserves. The other gives him a quick exit. One shows a chessboard of tension, logic, and sacrifice. The other gives a spectacle without depth. And that's why readers continue to return to the book, not just for the magic, but for the moments where overlooked characters find their worth. Ron's chess game is not a side quest. It is a pivotal point in the story where friendship, bravery, and intelligence intersect. It reveals that heroism isn't just about charging into battle. Sometimes it's about staying still, reading the field, and making the move no one else will. Ron Weasley did that not for applause, not for fame, but because someone had to. And he could. Number 25, the Gringotts break-in. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the moment when Harry and Hagrid visit Gringotts is brief, dazzling in its visual effects but stripped of the deeper intrigue present in the book. The audience is quickly whisked through the underground tunnels, the security of Gringotts is proclaimed to be unbeatable, and Hagrid retrieves a small mysterious object from Vault 713. Later, in a fleeting scene, Hagrid mentions that someone attempted to break into that same vault shortly after their visit. The implication is left hanging, almost as a passing curiosity, and the story moves on without much reflection from Harry or any of the characters. This omission might seem minor, yet it robs the narrative of a crucial thread of suspense that is present in the original text. In the book, however, the attempted robbery at Gringotts is not a mere footnote. It is a pivotal moment in Harry's early awakening to the dark undercurrents of the wizarding world. J.K. Rowling masterfully weaves this incident into the larger mystery, allowing the reader to feel the tension rising as the pieces begin to fall into place. After leaving Gringotts with Hagrid, Harry does not simply move on with his day. He begins to wonder about the package Hagrid retrieved. The bag was small, almost insignificant looking, yet Hagrid was visibly nervous, and Vault 719 had a certain eerie emptiness about it. When Harry later reads about the robbery in the Daily Prophet, the scene is not just informative, it is charged with implication. The article states that someone attempted to break into Vault 713, but that the vault had been emptied earlier that same day. The timeline is unmistakable. Harry remembers that he and Hagrid were there that morning. Hagrid had emptied the vault just hours before the robbery attempt, he thinks. This detail sticks with Harry, and Rowling allows his curiosity to build. The reader watches as Harry, still new to the wizarding world, begins to question the safety of Gringotts, the importance of the package, and why someone would risk breaking into the most secure bank known to witches and wizards. The idea that this is no ordinary theft begins to take root. This train of thought is important for one central reason. It begins Harry's journey not just as an observer of the magical world, but as someone who investigates, who questions, and who senses danger before it becomes obvious. In the book, Harry doesn't wait to be told that the Philosopher's Stone is in danger. He connects the dots himself. The robbery attempt isn't just a dramatic anecdote, it's a catalyst that sparks his suspicion. This early instance of Harry's reasoning skills sets a tone for the rest of the series. It is the first moment when he truly acts like a protagonist in a mystery, not merely a boy dragged along by events. Rowling also makes a deliberate choice in presenting the robbery through the lens of a newspaper article. This reinforces the idea that the wizarding world has its own media, its own forms of propaganda and bias. The article Harry reads is written with a sense of authority but omits crucial details. It claims that nothing was taken and that the vault had been emptied earlier. But it doesn't say what had been inside. It doesn't say who owns the vault. The vagueness makes Harry more suspicious, and this fuels his desire to learn more. By giving readers this ambiguity, Rowling invites them to speculate alongside Harry. What's more, Harry remembers the vault number 713. It isn't just a random location, it's a key detail he clings to. When Dumbledore later reveals that the Philosopher's Stone is being hidden at Hogwarts, Harry instantly recalls the package Hagrid took from that vault. The realization strikes him not as new information, but as confirmation of what he has already suspected. This is significant. It means Harry's understanding of the plot does not rely solely on adult characters revealing the truth. He has agency, he observes, remembers, and thinks. None of this happens in the film. By removing Harry's internal thoughts and his reaction to the news of the robbery, the filmmakers simplify the narrative. They place the weight of the mystery squarely on the adults, Dumbledore, McGonagall, Hagrid. Harry becomes more of a passive figure, swept along by events rather than actively engaging with them. This might make the film easier to follow for younger audiences, but it diminishes Harry's role as a thoughtful and inquisitive hero. The intrigue surrounding the Philosopher's Stone arrives too suddenly and without build-up. One cannot underestimate the psychological impact of these differences. In the book, Harry's suspicion grows slowly. It is not just the robbery. It is the strange package, the way Hagrid avoids explaining it, and the precise coordination of the crime. These things haunt Harry. He doesn't dismiss them. They bother him in quiet moments, like a puzzle missing pieces. This deeper engagement makes the story more immersive and allows the reader to join Harry in his discovery process. Without these details, the film version feels more like a linear adventure than a layered mystery. The newspaper itself acts as a silent character in the book. The Daily Prophet provides just enough information to intrigue, but not enough to satisfy. Rowling uses it to reflect the controlled dissemination of news in the magical world. Gringotts break in. Latest, the headline reads, and Harry reads every word. He notes that the vault was believed to have been emptied earlier that same day. The phrasing is vague on purpose. Believed suggests uncertainty. Earlier that day is not specific. To Harry, who knows exactly when the vault was emptied, the article seems like it's hiding something. This kind of detail trains the reader to be skeptical, to notice what is unsaid. Harry's reflections on the Gringotts break-in are not isolated. They affect how he views Hagrid's secrecy later in the book. When Hagrid slips up and mentions Nicholas Flamel, Harry latches onto the name. His curiosity, awakened by the robbery and Hagrid's strange behavior, leads him to research Flamel in the library. He and his friends spend weeks trying to uncover the truth. The robbery, in other words, isn't just a subplot. It sets Harry on the path of discovery. Without it, his quest for the Philosopher's Stone might not feel as earned. Even the setting of Gringotts contributes to the story's atmosphere in a different way in the book. When Harry and Hagrid descend into the depths of the bank, the vaults grow darker and more secure. Vault 713, Hagrid explains, requires a goblin to stroke the door, which then melts away. This visual detail is eerie and significant. The vault is empty when they arrive, but the description lingers. It is empty except for a grubby little package wrapped in brown paper. The incongruity of the setting, a high-security vault containing something so plain, lodges in Harry's mind. Rowling wants the reader to ask, what could possibly be so important? In the book, Hagrid's nervousness is also more pronounced. He stammers. He avoids Harry's eyes. He quickly hides the package in his coat. These gestures matter. They tell Harry that something unusual is going on. They make him alert. When the robbery occurs, Harry remembers those small moments and begins to understand their significance. The film version, by contrast, downplays Hagrid's anxiety. The camera does not linger on his unease. The tension is visual but not psychological. By omitting Harry's thought process, the film loses an important aspect of his character development. He is meant to be clever, observant, and driven by an innate sense of justice. In the book, the robbery is not just an external event. It becomes a mirror for Harry's growing awareness of the dangers that surround him. The magical world is not just whimsical, it is filled with secrets, and some of those secrets are deadly. This realization begins not with Fluffy or the mirror of Erised, but with a newspaper article and a suspiciously empty vault. The connection between the Gringotts robbery and the Philosopher's Stone is not overt in the book. Rowling lets it simmer. Readers are allowed to feel the suspense without immediate payoff. This slow-burn approach enhances the mystery and rewards attention to detail. Harry's gradual piecing together of clues is far more satisfying than a single reveal. It shows that even in a world of magic, knowledge is power, and those who question what they see often get closest to the truth. It is moments like these, seemingly minor, often silent, that define the richness of Rowling's narrative. The Gringotts robbery is not just an event, it is a thread that weaves its way through the story, touching characters, shaping decisions, and setting the stage for future revelations. To cut that thread, as the film does, is to simplify a tale that thrives on complexity. Number 26. Magical Classes. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the corridors of Hogwarts echo with a sense of wonder, but the classrooms remain largely silent. A handful of magical lessons are touched upon, one brief flying class with Madam Hooch, a flicker of spellwork in Professor Flitwick's class, and a single, tension-laced encounter with Professor Snape. These fragments of instruction tease the potential of a magical education, but leave the school feeling more like a backdrop to adventure than a living, breathing institution of learning. In contrast, the novel immerses the reader in the academic life of a wizarding student. J.K. Rowling's Hogwarts is not just a stage, it is the world itself, pulsing with structure, challenge, and discovery. The magic lies not only in spells and enchantments, but in the grind of homework, the anxiety of quizzes, and the joy of learning in a place built to nurture magic. The book establishes from the beginning that Hogwarts is a rigorous institution. When Harry boards the Hogwarts Express, his trunk is weighed down with textbooks, magical drafts and potions, a beginner's guide to transfiguration, fantastic beasts and where to find them, among others. These aren't just props, they are harbingers of an educational system with depth and design. The students don't simply arrive at Hogwarts to be swept along by destiny, they are expected to study. Rowling's descriptions of class schedules, assignments, and even student complaints about the volume of reading make Hogwarts feel tangibly real. The film glosses over this aspect, depriving audiences of the immersive academic rhythm that makes the world believable. In the book, Professor Sprout's herbology class introduces students to the living heart of magic. They repot screaming mandrakes, examine pufferpods, and learn the healing and harmful properties of magical plants. The greenhouse is not just a picturesque location, it is a place of scientific curiosity. Harry, Ron, and Hermione get their hands dirty, quite literally, as they engage with the magical flora. Mandrakes, or mandragora, are powerful restorative, Professor Sprout explains. They can return people who have been transfigured or cursed to their original state. The film omits these lessons entirely, leaving out not only Sprout but the entire reality of magical botany. The absence robs the viewer of an essential component of magical training, the understanding that not all power comes from wands. Professor McGonagall's transfiguration lessons also receive a richer treatment in the book. On their first day, she turns her desk into a pig and back again, demonstrating the complexity of altering reality. The students are tasked with transforming matchsticks into needles, and although progress is slow, the sense of effort and advancement adds to the realism of the school. Hermione's perfectionism shines here. She is the first to make her needles silver and pointy. Rowling uses these details to illustrate both the discipline required for magic and the competitiveness among students. The film, however, shows McGonagall for just a few moments, and the classroom becomes a brief spectacle rather than a place of struggle and achievement. Professor Binns, the ghost who teaches history of magic, never appears in the film, and yet his role in the book is crucial. He represents the dull but necessary academic side of Hogwarts. His lectures drone on, often sending students into daydreams, but they also offer important context about the wizarding world. It is in Binns's class that students first learn the story of the Chamber of Secrets in the second book, making his absence in the films even more striking. His character may be comically dry. Binns had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up next morning to teach, leaving his body behind. But he is part of the scholastic ecosystem of the Quirrell school. Omitting him simplifies the environment and removes a layer of academic realism. In Potions, Professor Snape embodies the dark side of teaching, intimidating, harsh, yet undeniably knowledgeable. The book provides detailed descriptions of his lessons. As there is little foolish wand-waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. Snape demands silence, precision, and respect. His classroom smells of crushed root and burning liquid, and students scramble to remember whether to stir clockwise or counterclockwise. His bias against Harry is personal and unfair, but it also reveals the human flaws within Hogwarts faculty. The film captures only a sliver of this dynamic. It introduces Snape with the classic, "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood," but fails to explore the ongoing discomfort and tension his classes bring. The classroom scenes with Snape in the book create pressure, fear, and realism. The film makes him a mysterious figure, but not a daily academic presence. Charms, taught by Professor Flitwick, is the class where the students learn the iconic levitation spell, Wingardium Leviosa. In the book, this lesson is a moment of social development as well. Hermione's insistence on the proper pronunciation and wand movement, it's Wingardium Leviosa, make the gar nice and long, leads Ron to mock her, an action that sets in motion their first real conflict. This interplay shows how classes are more than academic. They are social crucibles. The film keeps the levitation scene but cuts away from the broader context. The classroom is never revisited. Flitwick, like so many professors, becomes a background figure rather than a mentor. Homework, a mundane but crucial part of any school experience, is thoroughly woven into the book's narrative. Rowling does not shy away from detailing the stress of essays, the difficulty of magical terminology, or the consequences of falling behind. Harry and Ron often struggle, while Hermione thrives. "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could all have been killed, or worse, expelled," she scolds them after an unauthorized nighttime escapade. Her priorities, though exaggerated, underscore the seriousness of academic success at Hogwarts. The film never shows students studying, carrying books, or dreading their grades. This omission changes the tone of the school from one of rigorous, magical education to an adventure park with occasional interruptions. The atmosphere of the book is steeped in scholastic routines. Rowling builds an entire academic calendar, classes during the week, exams at the end of term, and points awarded or deducted based on performance. Gryffindor's struggle for the House Cup is not only about defeating trolls or discovering hidden chambers, it's about showing up to class, doing well, and behaving responsibly. Neville Longbottom loses 10 points for forgetting his password. Hermione gains points for answering questions in class. This creates a sense of accountability that grounds the fantasy in familiar educational structures. The film retains the idea of house points, but without the context of academic contributions. It loses weight. Even the library in the book is an essential part of learning. The restricted section, filled with books that whisper and shriek, is more than a plot device. It symbolizes the boundaries of knowledge. Hermione is often found here, poring over obscure texts. "When in doubt, go to the library," she says. The library fosters independence and curiosity. The film includes a single scene with Harry sneaking in under the invisibility cloak, but the broader intellectual atmosphere is missing. In the book, knowledge is a treasure to be sought. In the film, it is too often just an obstacle to overcome. Exams are another major aspect of Hogwarts life that the film largely ignores. In the book, students prepare for end-of-year tests with real anxiety. They memorize spells, revise potion recipes, and practice incantations. The pressure is palpable. "I've got exam nerves," Ron admits. "I'm going to fail everything." The results matter. Success or failure shapes their academic future. This pressure adds realism and stakes that deepen the story. Without exams, the film reduces the school year to a series of magical set pieces rather than a complete educational journey. The ghosts of Hogwarts are also entwined with school life in the book. The Fat Friar, the Grey Lady, and the Bloody Baron each have ties to their respective houses and occasionally provide insights or historical context. Peeves, the poltergeist, utterly absent from the film, is a chaotic presence who disrupts lessons and annoys professors. He embodies the unpredictable nature of a magical school, where even the halls have personalities. The exclusion of these characters in the film reduces the sense of a bustling, complex school environment. Quidditch, while thrilling, is presented in the book as just one part of student life. Harry's training, the rules of the game, and Wood's strategy meetings make the team feel like a real school sport. Practices are scheduled around classes. Injuries are treated by Madame Pomfrey. In the film, Quidditch becomes a cinematic highlight but loses its connection to the rhythm of student responsibilities. The integration of sport, academics, and social life in the book enhances the feeling that Hogwarts is a complete world with all the joys and burdens of adolescence. Rowling's attention to detail in describing magical education elevates Hogwarts from a fantasy backdrop to a character in its own right. The teachers have personalities, flaws, and methods. The subjects are vast and intricate. Students struggle, grow, and sometimes fail. The film version, while visually enchanting, trims these edges. It makes Hogwarts look like a series of beautiful rooms instead of a rigorous institution. For a reader, the wonder of Hogwarts lies in its realism. For a viewer, that depth is suggested but never explored. By stripping away the academic life, the film loses more than just classes. It loses the texture of growing up magical. The reader of the book walks the same stone corridors but also sits through the same difficult exams. They stress over the same essays, fear the same detentions, and rejoice in the same victories. The book makes the reader a student, the film makes them a spectator. And in a story built on the power of learning, that is a crucial difference.